So my first job out of college, I worked for a small startup company, a guy named Joe Durick. And he started this company called Protostar, which was a product development company. And it was just me and this other guy um, that were involved with the business. Joe had some huge success in the product development arena through a company he used to be involved with a partner that went south called Lentech, and they had some pretty successful products. There was a roach repeller that plugged into the wall where they made some huge strides on the home shopping network, and he made some pretty good money there. But him and his partner had a falling out, and he decided to start up his own deal. So that's where Protostar came about, and I joined that business with another guy named Paul, and we worked for some time trying to find new products to develop and take to market. I wasn't there for too long. Went to the National Hardware Show and got to learn some things about finding new products and contracting and doing business with manufacturers in China. I felt like that point in my career I needed to have a little bit more formalized training, because there really wasn't a whole lot of training in that environment. It was basically Paul and I trying to just wing it and figure things out. So I decided to move down to Miami and go sell copiers, because I wanted to try to break into the medical device arena. I worked with a recruiter, and they said you have to get some business to business sales experience, and one of the best ways to do it is to go sell copiers, because that's what the companies in the medical device arena, they look for, that copier sales experience, because it's a grind, it's a lot of training, a lot of cold calling, and essentially hearing a lot of no's. I couldn't even count on a calculator how many times I had doors slammed in my face and was told to go take a long walk off a short pier. To be okay with hearing no through that job, and it really kind of gave me some solid calluses to handle the grind of the business world, especially down in Miami. It was a tough gig, but I learned how to sell to businesses. I learned the art of solution-based selling, understanding the pressures of individual businesses and how to tailor a solution based on what pressures they were facing. I did decent with selling copiers, but it was definitely a job I was looking to move beyond from. And so when I got my opportunity to get into the medical field, I took it by storm as an associate with Stryker, and that was one of the best yeses I've gotten. The interview process for that job was pretty grueling. I think I had 7 or 8 different interviews. I had to fly all over the place to Kalamazoo, Michigan, some other state, maybe it was North Carolina, for another interview. I had multiple interviews in Florida. I drove to Orlando. I was all over the place, but it ended up all being worth it in the end, because I got the nod to work as an associate underneath a very successful account manager for Stryker, selling hospital beds, and I learned a ton from that mentorship opportunity, and then as well just the experience of working with the hospitals and selling. Pretty much every department within the hospital was involved with selling the hospital beds and stretchers. Every department, from environmental services to biomed to all of nursing, and on upward to the C-suite because these deals were multi-million-dollar bed deals. Hospitals don't just buy one bed. When they buy them, they typically replace the entire hospital with beds. And these beds that I was selling would range anywhere from $3,000 on upwards to $20,000 for a high-end critical care bed that had features built into it that you couldn't even imagine: bed alarms, electronic medical record keeping capabilities, surfaces that rotated the patient automatically, built-in self-propelled motors to help move the beds up and down the halls and maneuver them to prevent nursing back injuries. All kinds of really cool, innovative features, and it was a fun product to sell because again, I got to call on so many different departments in the hospital. I got to learn so many aspects of how the hospital works, from IT and the electronic medical records, and the whole transition from hand documentation to electronic documentation was a huge undertaking by the industry. If things aren't documented in the hospital, it was never done. So record keeping and medical records was a huge deal, and I got to learn and work hand in hand with nurses on their pressures and their struggles with their jobs day to day, and being intimately involved with helping make their jobs easier. I wasn't just involved with just selling the beds in the hospital. I also carried recliners and chairs and sofas for guests and family in the room. Basically everything, all the furnishings or furniture that is used to outfit a hospital room. I even sold labor and delivery beds, which was pretty fun. Bed to sell to nurses demonstrating the those beds, and getting into the delivery position was quite fun. Sold stretchers to all the different departments, from emergency room to the OR. And these stretchers weren't just your regular stretchers. They had all kinds of bells and whistles, self-propelled features. They went into chair positions. They had lift assist mechanisms that uses the patient's weight to help elevate the backrest of the stretcher. They had big wheel features built into the base to make it easier for the nurses to maneuver the stretcher and reduce the push force required to move the stretcher around. As an associate, I did very well. The rep that I worked underneath, I was actually supposed to only work underneath one rep, but I think that everybody got wind of my work ethic and how much passion I put into what I do. We would do these huge projects called bed evaluations, where we would go in and analyze the entire hospital's inventory of beds and stretchers, and we would put these elaborate reports together with pictures of the conditions of the beds and stretchers and furniture, and we would present those to the C-level folks. And this was a very tactical approach to driving new sales, because it allowed them to see visually what the conditions of their beds and stretchers were, which helped bring their attention to it and gain those capital dollars required to purchase the beds. Those reports took a ton of time to put together, and I spent a lot of my efforts assembling those reports. And I think that the other reps around the local area kind of got wind of what I would put together and helped put together. So I ended up working underneath like 3 different reps. The original rep that I worked underneath was in West Palm, and then I also helped out the Miami rep, and then I also helped out the rep in Naples. I think I helped them, but they also helped me, because now I not only was I learning from just one great rep, I learned under two other very good reps as well. So just that cross pollination and cross experience was very helpful in picking up and learning different styles of selling and doing business. So I'm grateful for those opportunities. Rep that I worked underneath, the majority of the time actually won Rep of the Year, and sold, I believe it was somewhere in the realm of $13 or $14 million worth of hospital beds and stretchers that particular year I worked underneath them. So with my success that I had as an associate, I was given the opportunity to become the full line rep in Miami, and I did that and had some success down in Miami, signed some very nice contracts and closed some very nice deals.
Bed off the truck. Hey, I brought an extension cord. We're gonna.
But it was always my passion and my goal to get into OR sales. So I continued to pursue that goal while I was selling the hospital beds, and finally got my break to join Salient Surgical, which carried the Aquamanus. Is hiring for an OR sales job requires OR sales experience. So I think in my mind, like, okay, well, if you always have to have experience to get the job, then how do you ever break in? But fortunately, I was able to a very rigorous interview process, and some connections that I had made previous in my Stryker role helped. I had a ton of online learning that I had to go through before going to the 2-week training course up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I had to take a test prior to going, and then I also had to take an entrance exam once I got to the training to be able to go through the training course, which was 2 weeks and very intensive, taking tests and exams on the material throughout the entire training course. We had to give presentations in front of the class and role plays, and it was very, very intense, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at night, and homework. But it was a great growth opportunity, and I learned a ton and gave me the foundation to be able to go out and drive the technology to surgeons in the field. When I got back from training, I really hit the territory hard and invested myself in going out and just, learning by doing. That's one of the things that I pride myself on, is I'm not really afraid to make mistakes. I feel like I do my best learning by making mistakes. So I went out there and I took the little knowledge that I had, and just really immersed myself into the OR environment. Try to learn as much as I could about just navigating. A big part of OR sales is just knowing how to navigate the OR and the timing and the delivery of your messages while you're standing in the OR or at the scrub sink. Knowing when a surgeon is going to be at the scrub sink, because the scrub sink is a huge opportunity to be able to deliver a message, and to know those little nuances. And even in the OR, you got to know when to speak up, and you got to know when to shut up. It's a very delicate environment when you're in there trying to sell in the OR, because selling in the OR is seen as a very big no-no especially from staff and even from surgeons. Surgeons don't like to be approached and sold while they're getting ready for surgery. So you have to be very tactical in your approach. So having that tact and having that finesse to be able to open doors in the OR is critical. And that was only developed through trial and error. It's just something that you gain through repetition and by making mistakes and by getting yelled at, unfortunately. But it's just, you know, part of the gig. And you learn those spaces, and you learn that timing, understanding the process and the flow of the OR to gain a lot of good real world OR experience, and that translated into sales, driving a lot of revenue for the business and for the company. And I had a lot of successes to celebrate. I won a lot of awards, and because of my success, I've been able to stay in this job for what most would compare to a lifetime. I can say in the almost 10 years that I've been doing what I've been doing, I've seen more reps and regional managers and higher ups come and go than I could ever begin to remember. Because of the growth that I've driven through my time, my territory has been shifted and cut, and I used to cover the entire South Florida market, but now I only cover 14 or 15 accounts. And because I've been around for so long, I've seen so many things change within the business. I was with the Salient Surgical Aquamanus side, and then Medtronic came in and bought us and bought Peak Surgical with the plasma blade and merged the two companies together. And now I got to carry both technologies, a world-class sealing device alongside a world-class dissecting and hemostatic device. Great opportunity for me to really learn the entire body when it comes to surgery. It enabled me to learn so many different procedure types and to get involved with so many different specialties. Feel very confident in my abilities to sell the current technologies that I carry, any new technologies that my company decides to give me. For me, what I do is not necessarily about product, it's more about process. And I believe that I can go out there and drive revenue and technology adoption with anything that I carry, because it's more about the people. I find my strength being my ability to have empathy and compassion, connect with people, understand their struggles, understand what pressures they're dealing with, and using whatever solutions that I carry to tailor to what their goals are and what can kind of take whatever pain they're dealing with away through my solutions. So whether it be I'm carrying the Aquamanus or selling the plasma blade, I believe that success is found in connecting with people, and then just, you know, building trust. I think that trust is one of the most important things that you can do with customers. I see myself as the brand. I put a lot of value in is the reputation that I develop with my customers. Like, right, so you can say I'm a sales rep, but I build reputation. I build my reputation, and that is the rep within the word reputation that I carry. So here's my entire portfolio of handpieces that I carry with my current medical device job. Got this nice little display case that it keeps all my handpieces nice and organized, so when I'm in meetings I can flip this thing out and give a full overview of all the different options that I carry. All my Aquamanus hand pieces, and then the ones here at the end that are in the green and pink handles are the plasma blade devices. Devices for open cases, and then as you move into these smaller tip designs, these are for minimally invasive procedures in the neuro space and spine procedures. So this is the core device that I sell. It's the Aquamanus 6.0, and the handpiece actually is connected to a generator. There's a cord that comes off here. This is just cut, so I can use it as a demo. But essentially, the energy, it's bipolar RF energy, and the energy dances between the two tips here, so that depth of penetration into the tissue is controlled at approximately 1 to 2 millimeters. So we get a very nice seal of the vessel, and it doesn't create that charring and that scab that the traditional modes of electrocautery create because of the higher temperatures. And if you see here, these little exit holes, that's where we infuse the saline into the energy to keep the temperature profile low, and also keep the surgical field lubricated so the surgeon can paint with the device. The saline also does another thing. It actually helps to deliver the energy, so we get very rapid hemostasis. And again, what the energy is doing is it's actually working. Let's just say this was the cross section of a vessel, but what we're doing is in the walls of the vessel there's collagen, and we're taking our energy and we're shrinking down that collagen and closing the vessel biomechanically, versus the traditional modes of electrocautery is working at a very high temperature and it creates a scab. It's more of a cork in a bottle effect. The problem with that form of hemostasis is that those scabs can crack and rebleed, and that scab actually creates a foreign body in the surgical field and could potentially cause infection. And it's just it's a lot more traumatic to the patient and to the tissue because of those higher temperatures. It's no different than if you were to burn yourself on the outside of your body. The hotter the temperature, the more of inflammatory response that the body is going to have. We've been very successful with selling this device in total joint replacement. We've been instrumental in helping surgeons transition from doing a posterior lateral replacement approach to a direct anterior, which is much better for the patient, a lot faster recovery period. The device has been instrumental in solid organ procedures. That's actually where the technology was first discovered, for solid organ liver resections. They saw the value in those procedures, and they saw orthopedic was a huge space and opportunity. Really went hard at introducing the technology to orthopedic surgeons, and it just so happened that that transition from posterior lateral approaches to the direct anterior, that procedure was much more bloody because it encountered the circumflex vessels. Procedure enabling technology that'll help surgeons adopt this new approach. It really helped to cut back on transfusion rates for patients because we were keeping the blood in the body, helping to preserve the H&H levels. Adverse effects related to what some people call a liquid connective tissue transplant. There's a huge cost associated with it. When patients get transfusions, there's risks of infection. They're required to stay in the hospital much longer. So there was a huge economic impact that the technology could make with helping patients stay healthier, feel better post-surgery, and help them to get out of the hospital faster and stay out of the hospital, because readmission penalties to the hospital systems was a major factor as well. You know, it's one thing to send patients home from the hospital, but if they don't stay home, then there's a huge economic impact because of the introduction to the marketplace for some newer drugs that have helped cut back and reduce transfusion rates. That conversation has not been as prevalent, but because of the change in how hospitals are paid, the conversation around optimizing patients and keeping patients as healthy as possible has kind of become the new standard. Bundled payments has really caused hospital systems to focus on making sure that patient is as healthy as possible when they leave the hospital, because there's a huge cost driver with post-operative destination, where the patient's going when they leave the hospital, if they're going directly home versus skilled nursing, how long they're actually staying in the hospital is a huge cost driver, and then if that patient actually comes back into the hospital is another major factor. And so by using this technology in keeping the blood in the body, that patient is going to stay optimized, stay healthy, and have better outcomes overall.
Using Acromed appears to be so blue and really tourniquet. The key here is right now you have bleeding, but once you get going on it, it's going to less and less.
What have you seen since you stopped using the tourniquet?
People have much less thigh pain. In fact, many of them are able to walk the same day of the surgery.
Same day of surgery?
And before they'd be miserable and having pain from the tourniquet. But they don't have tourniquet pain, and because we're using a adductor canal block, they also have motor function, so they're literally able to get up and walk the same way.
What about drains?
I don't use drains anymore. You can see a little blade bleeding, and that hasn't been a problem either. With using a tourniquet, I always use a drain. They all feel dramatically better because they wake up right away in the recovery room, and when they're on the floor, they can move their leg and they go, I can't believe I have no pain. And many of them are going home. A lot of them could go home probably the same day, but I have an older population. So I'm finding that many of them just stay overnight, but by the next morning, probably 2/3 of people go home. And when I see them 2 weeks in the office, they're barely using a cane and they have no pain. So there's 4 or 5 people I've done the last couple of weeks where I've done their other side. When they're 2 weeks in the office, they're asking me why didn't you do it this way 6 months ago or a year, and I'm sure this woman will tell me the same thing. But I would say that the patients are much happier. There's less blood loss. They don't need drains. And more importantly, they basically feel like right in the recovery room that they have no pain. And it stays that way.
Seeing the patients can leave the hospital faster too, right?
Well, absolutely. They're staying for 24. They probably could go home earlier, but I think I have an older population. Clearly, they're going home quicker with less pain. That's the most important thing. And they don't have pain. And as you can see now, we're haven't even cemented yet, and there's really no bleeding.
Yeah. Recapping this knee here,
Yeah,
it's completely
it does. Because when we start, we're all
it's completely bloodless.
So as soon as we flush it.
Perfect. Turn around.
Couple different tip designs on this particular handpiece. You can see here, this one's a little bit larger than this one. This is the 2-3 device, used more in neurosurgery for spine surgeons and brain tumors. And then we have this device. If you can see these cone tips here, that is for blunt dissection. The surgeon can drive these tips back and forth and actually cut with this particular device, so it'll cut and then achieve hemostasis at the same time. So these hand pieces are our epidural vein sealers, better known as the EVS, and the shaft here is all thermally insulated, and again we're using the same energy is delivered through all of our hand pieces, RF, bipolar, and infused with saline. But if you can see here, Here's the two sides where the energy dances across the tip, and then the little hole there is where the saline is delivered. But a spine surgeon will use this in the epidural space. In the spinal canal, there's small little vessels cut, they retract, and they can't be seen. And so what the surgeon can do is use this and in a piston fashion stamp down on those vessels and occlude them. So what they would do is they would just kind of in this motion, they can because the shaft is thermally insulated, they can get up against the nerve and retract back on the nerve, because a lot of times those vessels rest underneath critical structures and you can't see them. So it's nice because there's no heat there. You can retract back and then activate, press down and then activate to occlude those vessels. These two hand pieces are pretty much the exact same. The only thing different is the diameter. This one's bigger, this one's smaller. And then because surgeons liked both of these devices, a lot of times what would happen is they would open this device for open cases, and then within an open case they would have minimally invasive work that they would have to do. So they wanted to combine the best of both worlds into this handpiece here, so you can see. So they could use it in open planes and then also use it in the minimally invasive spaces, the very tight areas, to seal those epidural veins. Our smaller tip designs, you know, with the transition, everything is going smaller and more minimally invasive, so these smaller hand pieces are more attractive to surgeons. MIS flex devices, in their shafts, obviously the smaller tip designs, but then also the shafts are completely malleable, so they can really create any shape they want to work in the spaces that they're working. So again, another great design for brain tumor. So this is our plasma blade product line. You can see the pink handles is actually for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. In October we send out pink handles, but this device is used in breast surgery for mastectomies, electrophysiology. It helps surgeons for changing out generators and providing protection around the leads. Neurosurgery, when surgeons are working around critical structures and they want lower temperatures with less energy to provide safety in those spaces. But the way the technology works is it's monopolar technology. It runs off the same generator as the Aquamana system, but it's a little bit different in the fact that it dissects and protects, and then it also provides hemostasis while cutting. We're taking a very little amount of energy, and our generator is actually pulsing that energy at a very, very high rate. It's on and off very, very rapidly. This is how we're able to keep the temperature profile very low, but still give the surgeon the cutting performance of a cold scalpel, and at the same time give them the hemostatic effects of your traditional electric cautery. So it basically bridges the gap between both of those worlds, because if a surgeon had it their way, they would cut with a scalpel because that's the most efficient cutting modality. But the problem with that scalpel is then you would just run into bleeding the whole time. So that's where electric cautery has been a very advantageous technology for surgery. We're taking that energy and we're delivering it to the tip of this device. The other thing that we have that's preparatory is this thermally insulated tip. So we only allow the energy to come out of the very edge of the device. It's about 12.5 microns, which is about the thickness of a hair. And because that energy is so focused, that's why we don't need to deliver a lot of energy to achieve the cutting efficiencies and the hemostatic efficiencies that are required for surgery. Temperature profile stays at about 1/3 of your traditional electric cautery. We're providing protection around critical structures, leads, but we're also causing less tissue damage for the patient, which can help with wound healing and infection rates, especially in procedures like mastectomies, where the surgeon's working with a very, very thin skin flap. One of the major problems is compromised vascularity to those skin flaps from the thermal damage that's caused from the electric cautery. And so this lower temperature profile on the plasma blade really helps with preserving those skin flaps and minimizing risk of causing a dead flap. And so the other nice thing with the reduction in temperature is much less smoke output. Has a built-in smoke evacuator for any smoke that is produced by the device. This one actually has a built-in telescoping feature with a locking mechanism that the surgeon can adjust the length of the shaft to any length and just lock it in place. And then also the tip can turn to whatever angle and be locked into place. And then this one is just one length. This one's used more for electrophysiology with the pacemaker work when they're doing the generator upgrades, because it's very superficial, they're not going very deep. This one is used more for the mastectomy work when they're working in a deep hole, because they're creating that flap on the mastectomies. Having that length built in is a nice feature. These are the two main hand pieces sold out of the plasma blade line. We carry some other hand piece options. This device is for tonsil and adenoid removal, and then this is a needle tip handpiece for plastic surgeons for doing face work and very finesse dissection. So another thing that I carry is a lighted retractor, shining my light as much as I can. Completely disposable, the whole set, which is nice. Re-sterilization standpoint and efficiency standpoint. It comes with 4 different blade options, and then the power source, which is all battery operated. Little handle, little button right there on the handle. You can use it pretty much anywhere you want to see better, and that has been helpful with opening up different avenues. Visibility important is seeing something that could help you through cases, and more times than not they say yes. So with the different blade options, it's nice because we have a pretty wide variety of options for different procedures. The way the retractor works is you have this little lip here, and then the blade slides on here, and then you just got to hook it on that lip and then pull up, and it snaps in place. And then to remove it, these tabs right here, remove it, and then those blades are interchangeable. Be working like in a flap, they'll use it to lift or retract, and then they can illuminate and see in the surgical site. That big blade is for large areas or working in deep pockets, and we have some smaller blade options. I sell this one to electrophysiologists that are doing the pacemaker work, so they can draw, retract back, and get better visibility for some of those tougher cases where they can get into some bleeding that they can't identify. Selling energy, bringing energy, shining light,